the reason we go into purpose first is because none of the information that you learn or tactics or strategies that you apply around time management and all of that are going to stick if you don't know why you're really doing what you're doing, right? So purpose is about like really connecting with what your God-given talents, not really talents, but just gifts are, right? What comes naturally to you. And typically it's something that's so simple, right? That you don't even think of it as a gift because it is so natural to you. And then it's also about going deeper in terms of that purpose and finding out why is that your purpose. It's really important to know why you're motivated to do something, because your why is what keeps you going as time goes on. And helps to have you be pulled forward as opposed to pushing, 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 right? Like if you feel like you're always pushing to achieve your goals, then most of the time you're not really connected to what your bigger purpose is and what your deeper why is. And so that's what we've been uncovering this week. So if you're watching the replays and you are just catching up right now on day 4, go back and look at the videos from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions. Those of you who are live, I want you to interact. And even if you're watching the replay, because I go back in and I answer those questions. So we're going to go back. We're going to go back. Yesterday, I gave you guys this tip on how you can start to uncover like little seeds, right? Little clues to what your bigger purpose is. So many of you who are in this group are really, you know, aspiring to do something more in the world, right? Like you feel like there's more inside of you. If that's you, let me know in the comments. Like you know that you're destined to do something maybe bigger than you're doing, to reach more people, to make a difference, to share in a different way. And so what's really important about the process that I gave you yesterday, or process, depending on how you say it, is that it helps you use your past. It helps you use your past to look for clues as to what you're being called to do. Because no matter what you believe, our past is a great part of why we are motivated towards something. Now, your past doesn't have to dictate your future, but it can give us clues to why we're being called to do something. So if you haven't done yesterday's process, please do that because it will really help you. So here's what I want to share today about going back. And you have like going way back to childhood. And I know you've heard this before, but I really want to land it for you. I want to land this for you because I used to hear this and say, oh, yeah, I used to like to play as a kid, right? When people would say, the question is, what did you love to do when you were a child? What were you really great at? You know, what did you love to do? And I used to hear that and I would kind of like roll my eyes, right? Have you ever felt that way where you're like, oh, you know, when I was a child, all I did was play. That's what I like to do. But the truth is, when I actually go back and allow myself the memory of like important things that stood out about me that were repetitive, right? Repetitive, like where I could see that pattern a lot in childhood and starting at a young age and then peppered all the way through into young adulthood or teenage years. I do see that there was a common theme for me, a common theme, and it wasn't playing. I don't actually have that memory of just loving to play, right? Like that wasn't me. Maybe it is yours. But I have very distinct memories. I'm going to take you into my grandparents' house right now, where we spent a lot of our time growing up. So it was myself, my brother, and at least 5 or 6 cousins. We spent a lot of time there, and then of course the neighborhood kids, but mostly with my cousins. So I have a very clear memory of us being in the backyard of my grandparents' house, and they lived in the city, but they had this like big house in the city and this small garden out back, and the house was all made of brick. And I would sit my cousins, all of them were younger except one, I would sit them down in front of me on the curb and my grandfather had built this brick or concrete kind of wall around the garden, and they would sit there. It was kind of like a bleacher or a bench, and I would take chalk and I would write on the outside of the wall. I would write on the wall of the house. and I was teaching them, right? At any opportunity that I had to sit them down in front of me and teach them something and talk to them about something, like I literally remember, and my cousins and I recently as adults had a conversation about this, which made the memory just so much more bright, right? Like it just came into my memory so clear. And there were several memories like this, but there's this one and another one that really stands out, where I would just perform, but performing wasn't singing and dancing. It was me talking to them. It was me like preaching, right? Kind of like what I do now. And that was a very natural thing for me. That was a very natural thing for me. Another memory I have, even younger than that, is sitting them behind the couch in my grandparents' house. So a couch, it was a floral couch, had the matching couch, love seat, and chair with the plastic over top of it. Did anyone in your family ever have like the plastic over their furniture to protect the furniture? And so in the summer, your legs were always sticking to it and your arms were sticking to it because it got so hot out. Well, I have this memory of sitting them behind the couch and like me orchestrating, like, okay, Yvette, you're good at this. Do this now. Okay, Crystal, this is what you're gonna do, right? And kind of like choreographing or managing them. And when I was talking to my cousins recently, and this was like recently a couple years ago when we were all together over the holidays, this was a memory that we all laughed about. They're like, of course, you would grow up to eventually be a coach. Right? So I say eventually because like many of us that go on a coaching journey or a spiritual journey become, leaders or influencers or speakers or whatever it is that we end up doing that's really of like service, contribution, coaching, that type of thing. Like we don't typically all start out that way, right? Like we don't all start out that way. We start out doing other traditional things that are quote unquote good jobs, right? Are you guys getting this? Is this landing with you? And so like most of you and like most people who have this journey to eventually be a coach or contribute in some other way, we've done other things on the way there, right? So whether that's whatever it is. For me, it was, a bunch of stuff, working at restaurants, being an administrative assistant, which was the worst position I could have ever been in. Just totally not cut out for that job. And then doing some other things, right? I started out as an entrepreneur, had a massage business, had a fitness center, because listen to this, fitness is my passion. I automatically assumed that what I'm passionate about is what I get to turn into a business. A lot of people do that. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that sometimes and many times what we're passionate about is not necessarily the bigger purpose. It's not necessarily the bigger purpose. And it can be one of the mechanisms to express your deeper purpose, your deeper why, right? If you go back to the video that I did on here, I believe on Tuesday, I talked about Jules, someone that did a VIP day with me, who thought that her purpose and mission was to spread plant-based lifestyle. But when we got underneath of it, that was just one of her mechanisms for promoting a family unit. Now, I know that doesn't sound like they go together, but it does, because her bigger vision is that 5 generations of her family will be sitting around at the table, right? So like her mother, which will be, so that's the grandmother, then her daughter, her daughter's daughter, her grandmother, her mother, her daughter, and her daughter's daughter, right? So 5 generations. And her mechanism for having a family unit, because she did not have a family unit growing up, like it was so disrupted, and that meant so much to her. And her grandmother, who she was closest to, one of her grandmothers, died at a young age because of, I think, diabetes, right? Health. So her mechanism for facilitating like family unit, like that's what she's driven by, happens to be like a healthy lifestyle, right? And food is just one of them. There's other parts of that. So we all do this. We think sometimes that what we're meant to do out in the world is like something that we're good at and maybe is our own passion, right? And that's okay. But what I'm inviting you to ask yourself is there something deeper underneath that? So even when I was teaching fitness, right, and I owned a gym and I loved that. However, what I really got to was that it wasn't so much that I wanted to coach people in fitness. It was that I wanted to make a difference for people in their life. I wanted to show them how, like myself, in so many different areas of my life, you can actually transform yourself, right? Like the body is just one mechanism, right, for transforming yourself. And so underneath all of that was really my drive to teach people how to take personal responsibility for whatever result that they wanted, right? Like not to blame genetics, not to blame, the past. And that has nothing to do with that has to do, yes, with your health, but it has to do with so much more than that, deeper than that, right? And so when you unpack that, like you start to see, wow, this is what my life was always preparing me for. This is what my life was always preparing me for. And you might be at that point in your life. I don't know if you want to call it a crossroads, an awakening, but do you feel like you're at a point in your life where you're like, my past has been preparing me for this, or my past has been preparing me for something that's coming, and you're still really kind of uncovering what that is. If that's you, I totally get it. I've been there. All like my clients have been there, my colleagues, that we all share this similar experience. So sitting around, are you guys getting me on this? Like, does this make sense for you too? So sitting around with my family during the holidays, they're all like, of course you were going to end up coaching people. Of course, in some way you were gonna end up, mentoring people or speaking on stages. Like that's always how it was, like us sitting down and looking up and, looking to you. And yesterday I asked you, one of the pieces, or during the superpower video, one of these weeks, maybe that was yesterday, I can't remember, I'm sorry. But I said, ask people to share with you, what are you the go-to person for? And all of my life, I have been the go-to person for somebody wanting to come and say, hey, I've got this issue. I need your help on seeing this in a different way or getting over this, right? Like, so they're coming to me for counsel. Maybe you have that experience as well. And here's what we often do. We take that for granted and we think that that's just, oh, well, yeah, doesn't everybody go to people for advice? No. Like we take for granted what our superpower is, what our God-given gift is, right? And we don't realize that is the purpose. Somewhere in that is the purpose. Somewhere underneath that is the why, is the bigger, greater contribution you get to make in the world, whether it's as an entrepreneur or not, even as an employee, even as a parent, even as a friend, even as someone who maybe starts a nonprofit organization, right? Like there's so many ways that you can get your purpose out into the world. It doesn't have to only be as an entrepreneur. You could be the best asset that anybody has ever had in growing their company because you are in a position that absolutely lines up with your greater gifts and purpose. So one more quick story I want to share, and then I'm going to look at your comments here so I can interact and give you some responses. But Sasha came to me recently, and Sasha is a successful entrepreneur. She's been an entrepreneur about as long as I have been, 15, 16 years, I believe. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because sometimes you've been doing what you're doing for so long that you don't consider whether or not it's time for a refresher, a check-in, right? Like sometimes you have forgotten who you are. Sometimes you have forgotten who you are. And this is what I see. This is how I see connecting with your greater purpose, right? You're connecting with your greater purpose in life, like going through that journey. And I do something called an SMV, like getting clear on what your purpose is, your stand, your mission, your vision, and why. Like that process, I call that kind of remembering who you are, remembering who you were born to be. Remembering who you were born to be. And that's a question that you can even sit and meditate with or journal with or just talk out loud a lot. Catherine, I think you're on here still. Like you said something yesterday in a message to me about, I get my thoughts out by talking them out. Guess what? So do I. Many creative people, that's how they get their process can be messy. If you're somebody who's really creative, a lot of times our process is messy. It's not like A, B, C, D, right? It's messy, but then we get it all out, and then it all takes shape and it's beautiful. So the reason I'm sharing that is it doesn't always have to be journaling. A lot of times I get all of my creative juices out when I'm out on a walk or I'm jogging, and I talk to myself. So you can ask yourself these questions out loud in addition to or instead of writing. Like, who was I born to be? Allow me to remember God, universe, whatever it is that you connect with in a higher purpose or higher way or being, is remind me of who I was born to be. I have a show coming up in October where I'm interviewing, well, the title of the show is Not Born to Be Average, Not Born to Be Average. So you can imagine the kind of people that I'm interviewing. Okay, so really quickly to tie in this piece about Sasha. So she's a successful entrepreneur. She changes lives and for so many women. She works with women in business and she's just phenomenal, and she's become a great friend of mine. And she reached out to me recently and was like, I need to I want to connect with my SMV. Like, she knows the work that I do. And she's like, I just feel like it's time. She's a smart entrepreneur, right? When you're smart and humble, when you're humble enough to reach out, even though you've already had success, it's like my business coach, Shanda Sumter, it's her being humble enough and smart enough to say to me, hey, let's connect once a week so you can help keep me on my edge. Right? Like mindset wise, drive wise, right? Because she's attracted to the kind of lifestyle that I live, right? The fitness and all of that kind of stuff. And so the point in sharing this is like, don't let yourself ever get to a place where you think you've got it all figured out, right? Like sometimes we need to plug in, we need to refresh. And so Sasha came to me for that refresher. And what was so beautiful about the session that we did, and she came away with a super clear SMV, her stand, her mission, her vision. And prior to that, we had done a vivid vision session, which Ever, I know you and I are doing today. I'm really looking forward to that. And she got so much clarity in that because she said, gosh, Jessica, I had forgotten that this was my gift all along. I had forgotten. That happens to so many of us once we're out in the work world, in the workforce, we're doing what we're doing, and we get into that day-to-day grind. Sometimes what happens is you start doing things, and I'm not saying this was Sasha, but I'm just saying in general, sometimes we start doing things more for the money or the profit or, because we're following this coach and, somebody online who we see doing things this way, right? So we start to get all fancy with it, right? Like we just start trying a bunch of different things. And often what I find all the time, in fact, what I find is when we come back to the basics, the foundation of what we were always born to do. And it can be as simple as just supporting someone, coaching someone. It can be as simple as expressing through your art. It can be as simple as helping somebody define who they are. Right? It can be as simple as what I do, helping people get clarity around what they stand for, what their mission is, what their vision is, and then teaching them how to plug in the mindset tools to actually go all the way with your goals, right? To create an exceptional, high performing life, right? To be exceptional at what you do, right? So things can be that simple, right? So what I invite you to do is start to remember who you were born to be. What is it in your childhood that you were just so naturally gifted at? So I'm going to go right now and look at your comments here so I can, oh, thank you, Ever. I'm sending healing vibes to my daughter, Lily. That is so sweet. I love collecting mugs. By the way, I want to say, like, the old me would have never come on, like, just rolling out of bed, my hair like this. Now, like, I'll do this often, right? Because I now know as a coach and as a leader that it's not about me. It's about what I get to share with you that can inspire you in some way to take action. And the reason I share that is because so often we're holding ourselves back, we're holding our gifts back and what we have to share with the world because we're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of being judged, right? Like, my clients just came off of a 32-day stretch of being seen. And the reason is so many of them were resisting that, right? So I had them going live for 20 minutes a day, at least 20 minutes a day, on Facebook or Instagram. I have, like, testimonial after testimonial that my team is putting together and screenshots and all of that of, like, the huge breakthroughs they've had, and 90% of them have continued to go on now into almost day 40 because of, like, how much they've been able to support people, how much they've realized their voice matters, what they have to say and share matters. Half of them, I believe half of them, I don't know if that's the exact percentage, but have gotten new clients, have gotten their first client, have sold their first product, right? Like, so many things happen when you get connected to, and see, they're now connected to their stand, mission, vision, bigger purpose. And so now they're out there leading with that. And when you lead with how you are there to support and serve people, and you stop making it about you, that's when you get in that flow and you start having the impact that you want. And if you're an entrepreneur, you start making the money that you want that way. Okay. Evram said, yes, that is me. I'm not sure which part of that. Catherine says, my favorite game was Monopoly. I almost always won because I was always in for the long haul. No surprise, I won at money and real estate in life. That is so, like, insightful, Catherine. And I'm so happy that you're reading that because I know that, you know, your stand is financial freedom. And, you know, you have questioned yourself a few times on that, but it's funny how you look back on that and you see that, right? So, like, in Monopoly, I don't think I always won. I probably was, I don't know if I was in it for the long haul, but, like, the fact that you had that memory that was really clear to you as you were seeing everybody else make decisions that weren't that wise, right? In the moment, they were just making them for the moment. They were buying that Park Avenue or whatever that one is that's really expensive, and then they had no money to pay for their fees, right? So that is insightful. That's a piece that's insightful, and it can be that simple, right? Let's see, Evram, I was always a grounded child. That's so beautiful. Wiser and more mature than my friends. I loved games that involve running, climbing, and competition, right? So you were always competitive already, but super mature. I was also obsessed with painting and drawing. So a lot. You have a lot of creative energy. Knitting for my dolls. My daughter does that. She makes clothes for her dolls and stuff like that. She's very much a caretaker. I see both aspects in my life. I love thriving my family while feeling ambitious to heal and thrive. So there's still something else to get underneath there, Evram. You can continue to go deeper with that. Like, you know, what did I always do with my spare time? You know, we can go deeper. So I see, like, you're touching on a bunch of stuff, but there's some, and you and I are going to have a vivid vision. So we don't go into SMV during that, but you're going to come out with a great, with some great clarity. Isidro, yes, I almost forgot who I want to be. Working with you, it's refreshing for me. Thank you, Isidro. What was your go-to thing as a child, Isidro? What was it that you know, you remember yourself as or doing, right? Some of you were like, I think of my daughter, like, she's so loving, like, she's so loving from a young age, right? Like, she puts other people first, right? I wasn't that way. Right? So that's like a distinction. She's also a phenomenal drawer. In her spare time, she will draw. She'll read, but she'll also draw. Um, Catherine, people have laughed at me talking to myself. Yeah, it's so good because you're getting it out. If you're a creative person, and anybody here who was driven to be an entrepreneur, but that is a very creative outlet. Because think about it, as an entrepreneur, you are the visionary. You are creating. You are constantly, almost always in a birthing process, right? So oftentimes people can look at women in business as very masculine, but the truth is entrepreneurship in itself, not the day-to-day like tasks and all of that and the output, like that is masculine. And we all have masculine, feminine, but the creative part of, the vision, the bigger picture, that is very feminine. That is the birthing of something. And so it makes sense that you need to get it out. You can't keep it in your head. You can't keep the child inside of you forever, right? You let it, you let it build up, or not build up, you let it grow, you nurture it and all of that. But at a certain point, you've got to get it out. So you get it out in writing, you get it out in talking, you get it out in speaking, you get it out in your coaching conversations, you get it out in actually putting together the product, the service, or the offer that you have for someone, right? If you keep it inside, what happens? Like, besides it not birthing, like somewhere it dies inside of you, right? So moving things out of you is so important. Good morning, Michelle. Isidro wanted to be a business person, buying from people and selling to people. So you always were inspired to be in business, which you now are, Isidro. Like that is what you're shifting into. And what's even more beautiful is the way that you're doing business now. So there's some work that you get to do even deeper in that layer about what you're now doing in the world with animals, and specifically horse training. Because like maybe there's even something there about buying and selling horses eventually. I mean, there's so much that you start to see and unpack when you allow yourself to go through these processes of really uncovering this. And like Michelle, if you haven't seen the videos this week, I encourage you to go through, because I give specific exercises and things that you can do to really get deeper with this. Being an entrepreneur is the only thing I can ever be. I'm not a good employee. I always want to improve the business. Yeah, and as a child, the question was, Michelle, like as a child, what do you remember about yourself? Like, what do you remember yourself doing? I shared earlier, like I always had all my cousins and my brother and my friends like lined up, sitting down in front of me, and I was teaching them something, or I was managing them in some way, like, putting on productions and things like that, but where I was the one coaching, how everything was going to go, right? So and always my friends have come to me, like so many people who are coaches. People have always come to you for advice or to help problem solve. So Michelle, maybe as a child, you can remember yourself maybe doing a lemonade stand or something like that, right? Like look for the clues of, what you were always born to be, because that's what connecting with your purpose is about. It's remembering who you are, remembering who you were born to be. Okay, so I'm so happy that you all joined me here. Oh, thank you, Catherine. I'm so glad these talks are valuable for you. Isidro, the enrollment we are doing is big for me. So inside of my coaching academy, I have a group of coaches and aspiring coaches and entrepreneurs inside of my Get Set Coaching Academy. The next wave, by the way, starts in February. We open the doors in November. So if you're someone who already knows that you want to work with me and you want to go through my coaching academy, send me a message now and we can start talking about some early bird stuff. But Isidro is saying that the enrollment that we're doing right now in that group is big for him. So I'm really coaching them on enrollment, which many people call sales, but I do this a whole different way. And it's super powerful because it really comes from a connected place. And this is an area that I really excel in, and that companies have hired me as contractor to come in and do, even for my coach Shandon Hartcore, because sales or enrollment is something that just is really natural for me. And I'm really teaching that process inside of my group. And Isidro, I'm so glad to hear that that's really big for you. Yeah, you always wanted to be the leader, Michelle. Totally, totally makes sense. You were probably a little competitive. Most entrepreneurs are. I always wanted to be the player on the team everyone could count on. So responsibility, Michelle, like there's this pull towards being responsible. And in that process that I gave either yesterday or the day before, about starting from present and working backwards to birth and getting all those pivotal moments, and how I talked about oftentimes we're driven forward from a dark place, right? Like you may be able to unpack even deeper on that, like why it was so important for you to be counted on, right? And you get to look around in your family life and see, you know, were you not able to count on certain people, adults, maybe you were, and maybe you were just inspired by the people that you could count on. So there's something there, right? Like the clearer we get about the why, like it just opens up so many doors. And again, that's what keeps you moving forward and keeps pulling you forward as opposed to pushing. Isidro, all my family has been doing it for generations. I used to buy and sell. That's so cool, Isidro. So you already used to buy and sell cattle, and now you're with horses. I mean, I think this is just so beautiful, Isidro, that you are really, do you see how you are on purpose? And now that you're with the community, and our Get Set community is amazing, just amazing. We have so many powerful, just connected, loving people in that group who are doing amazing things, and Isidro is one of them. But the point is, now that you're in this type of community, Isidro, you now are getting the tools and the support that you need to actually make this like a great business and sustain yourself. And like you said, not just be working for someone else doing this. So it's so powerful. So excited for you. Ephraim, I remember that I wanted to perform on stage. No, that's not what all girls wanted, to be a ballerina. I love that. So we're going to tie up now. This is later than any live that I've done. And it's because my daughter is homesick, so she's sleeping right now, so I don't have to run off to the bus stop. But I am going to prepare for my session with Evram in 25 minutes. If you would love to do a Vivid Vision session with me, let me know in the comments, and we'll reach out to you, and I'll get you scheduled. This is a beautiful process that we do. It's about 75 to 90 minutes, and then there's some follow-up work after that. And it's just a beautiful process, and I always feel honored to be in the process with the person on the other end of the phone. So I will see you guys tomorrow for Hot Seat Friday. Last week our person was not able to get in, so fingers crossed. And if you want to be considered for Hot Seat, type the word Hot Seat here, or send an email to support@jessicaperezbeebe.com. Have an incredible day, everyone. Bye.